Acting Speaker, and I rise today to speak in strong support of the bill before the House that amends the Australian Grand Prix Act 1994. Of course, the amendments are both practical and forward-looking, and they recognise the immense popularity of our Formula One in Australia and, of course, worldwide, and they ensure the Australian Grand Prix continues to deliver benefits for the Victorian economy and also for local communities and for the millions of fans who make this event a fixture of our sporting calendar. But before the member for Polwarth leaves the chamber, I wasn't aware that Polwarth was the event capital of Victoria until today. So thanks for enlightening me. I must spend more time down there if that's the case, and see some of these major events down at Polwarth. And I should reassure the member for Polwarth that in any event, if there's an emergency, that's what warning devices are for on emergency vehicles, and they're not allowed to be obstructed to attend to emergencies. So I can assure you and your community that I know from a paramedic's point of view, they will get to those people when they need to get to those people. So, and the people that run the events will also assist emergency service workers in doing their job. I want to thank the Minister for Tourism, Sport and Major Events for bringing this forward and delivering many, many major events for Victoria. And of course, we should remind those opposite that were quite negative about this state and not being able to attract major events. They said the sky was going to fall in. Well, guess what? How wrong were they? How wrong were they? Let me just rattle off a few of the events that we have that are coming up. A multi-year deal for Melbourne to host the NFL regular season games from next year. 2-year deal to host the Australian Open Golf. The NBA-NBL series, for the first time an NBA team, the New Orleans Pelicans, will play on Australian soil. And of course, the wonderful Rugby World Cup in 2027, which we'll all look forward to. And the mighty Wallabies are on their way back. And of course, next year, the great Neil Diamond musical, What a Beautiful Noise, and that'll be a fantastic event also. But that's just a few, let alone our normal, regular major events that I'll come to later. I do want to touch on a bit of a personal reflection, and that is, I will admit that when the Grand Prix first moved from Adelaide to Melbourne back in 1997, I was very sceptical. There was two reasons. One was Jeff Kennett, and I did protest against the Grand Prix being brought to Melbourne, and in particular being brought to Albert Park. I didn't think it was a great idea having it at Albert Park. No, well, I can assure everyone I've never been to the Grand Prix at all, except for the Grand Prix dinner this year on the Friday night, because I was asked by a minister to attend. But I have never been to the Grand Prix. It's not my cup of tea. But in the early years, I was against it being at Albert Park. I thought it would have been better off located at Sandown, but I've changed my mind, and it's an entrenched major event here. And I think Albert Park is the best location for it, and it's easier for spectators to get to, and many, as we'll come to, many hundreds of thousands of people attending that race. Of course, it's become synonymous in this city. It's a pillar of Melbourne's identity as a sporting capital of Australia, and indeed one of the great sporting capitals of the world, with, of course, the magnificent AFL Grand Final, a wonderful spring racing carnival. Can't wait for it to come up shortly. The Australian Open, of course, and many other major sporting events. You know, it was referred to about Bells Beach and things like that, the surfing championships, the great road races that we had. And I know in the beautiful town of Buninyong, in the seat of Eureka, we had the Australian Road Racing Championships for 21 years. Yeah, for 21 years, and it's now gone off to Perth, unfortunately, and I hope it's a failure in Perth. But anyway, so it can come back to beautiful Buninyong. But anyway, that's another issue. Of course, the timing of these amendments could not be more significant. Formula One is undergoing a period of unprecedented global growth, from Miami to Singapore, from Las Vegas to Jeddah. New circuits are entering the calendar, and of course putting a lot of pressure on the current circuits around the world. And of course, Netflix Drive to Survive has opened the sport to a younger generation, which is fantastic, and a more diverse audience who are now flocking to the races in numbers never ever seen before. And, you know, great sponsorship, broadcasting rights, tourism revenues, all at all-time highs. It's not just a sport anymore, it's a global entertainment juggernaut. And Melbourne's Grand Prix has made it that way, has complemented it so much. And this year's Grand Prix, I went for the first time on the Friday night dinner. I noticed there were a number of opposition members there on the Friday night. I don't know if it was a freebie, but there were plenty of opposition members on the Friday night dinner. I didn't see the member for Hawthorn there, but there was a number of others. I know the member for Melbourne was there, a member for Hilton was there. It was a good night, a very good night. But going into the event, there was about 100,000 spectators coming out in all their clobber and clothing and things like that, which is amazing. And I think someone said, ticket prices for just one particular stand, $240 a session, and I'm thinking $245 a session. I'm thinking, wow, that's dedication if people are going over 4 days, and then they're dressed up to the nines in their gear, and it's fantastic to see. But so my first opportunity to attend the Grand Prix was at the dinner this year, which was a very good dinner, I should say. Of course, all the evidence speaks for itself. In 2025, we witnessed the most attended Australian Grand Prix in history. Over 465,000 people poured into Albert Park across the 4 days. That makes a massive statement in regard to the growth of this race and how it's entrenched in Melbourne now. But looking ahead, the momentum is only building. In 2026, the Australian Grand Prix will unveil a brand new stand, their Piastri stand. And I think it was the member for Morwell might have raised it about Oscar and how wonderful it is that he's leading the championship. What a great driver he is as a young Melbourne boy. But I've got to make reference to some other drivers through this type of sport. We talk about Oscar Piastri, Brighton boy. There's James Wharton, that's an F3 driver. He's from Bundoora. I know Colin Brooks, the Minister Brooks would be quite happy about that, local lad, F3 driver. Ava Agnostiades, Formula Academy. So, sorry, member for Sandringham, I missed that.
Member for Sandringham on a point of order.
I have a high regard for the member for Melton, but to casually refer to Minister of the Crown as Brooksy is unparliamentary. And I'd encourage you to encourage the member for Melton.
I believe the member for Melton corrected himself, but thank you, member for Sandringham.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. I did. Yeah, I did. That's what I call him outside of the chamber all the time. It's very hard to forget that. So, and I should say he owes me 4 bottles of wine for a bet that we had recently. But anyway, we'll collect that shortly. So, and I can't forget at the Grand Prix dinner, a young woman, Joanne Giaconti, who is a Formula Academy driver also, and what a great ambassador for the sport and a great inspiration for the younger generation engaging in this type of sport. But it'll be fantastic to see the new stand open next year and people going into the track with the Piastri stand being there, so it'll be fantastic. The bill extends the maximum race period from 7 days to 21 days. There's been enough people that have spoken on that. As I say, nearly 500,000 people went to the race this year. The bill also guarantees access to parts of Albert Park during the extended period. Those community spaces, it legislates for public access, so that's important. It also increases the payments to Parks Victoria, and this is another important step. Hosting the Grand Prix places additional responsibility on Parks Victoria. So both before and after the event, it increases their funding, ensures that they can maintain the park to a high standard, supporting both the event and the broader community. It also enables the Australian Grand Prix Corporation to host non-motorsport events, which is important because it means that they can diversify. It allows them to generate new revenue, which is really important, which will reduce the financial burden on the Victorian government and taxpayers, of course. And it also modernises the governance provisions, allowing acting appointments to the AGPC board. So this is a really good bill. Again, I commend the Minister for bringing this bill to the House. There are many, many financial benefits out of this bill. It increased Victoria's gross state product by $323.9 million. It delivers an estimated $3.08 in economic impact. It is a really important bill and I commend it to the House.